of long hours into these meetings, and we thank you for that, and I would agree with you that it does make this a better project, and
If there is a problem, what is the remedy? Is it going to be to stop the project? Is it going to
Hennepin County Commissioner Peter McLaughlin and Tim O'Brien take measure of the challenges to and the importance of the Southwest Light Rail Project. And then, Eden Prairie Mayor Nancy Tyra-Lukens notes the consequences of possible light rail station cuts.
The issue is, what do we do about Southwest Station and Town Center Station? We really don't want to lose either of those stations at this point.
This is a special edition of Democratic Visions. Here's Tim.
Hennepin County Commissioner Peter McLaughlin is one of the metro area's leading and most effective elected advocates for sustainable multimodal transportation. That means good roads, good bicycling, and an integrated light rail, commuter rail, and bus system. Welcome, Peter.
Glad to be here.
I know that you put your heart and soul into the success of the projected Southwest Light Rail Transit system. It seemed like it was going along. I mean, there's the Kenilworth problem, the funding, and making sure that the people in Washington are on board with the project, which apparently they are, and apparently President Obama has put it on as one of his priority projects.
Absolutely.
But, a big but here, cost seems now to have reared its ugly head. Seemingly from out of the blue, at the end of April of this year, the price tag has jumped to nearly $2 billion. Now, I'm not here to debate whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, but can you give our viewers some insight as to how that took place?
Well, it jumped by $341 million. Let's just go back to the $1.25 billion price tag first. Then it went to $1.65. As the engineering on these projects evolves, the costs usually go up, because you identify more specific problems, things that need to be fixed.
You can make more detailed estimates.
Yes. The freight rail issue had to be resolved, and that was not in the $1.25 billion estimate. So at least half of that jump from 1.25 to 1.65 was about dealing with the freight issue.
Mm-hmm.
So that one, you just got to do that. The federal government said it's part of the project, so fine, we're going to take care of that. These new costs, $341 million, came about largely because of more costly treatment of wetlands and soil conditions, some additional polluted lands, all of which have to be taken care of, and then there were some additional property acquisitions. But mostly it had to do with wetlands, and it gets very expensive. Having been one of the people that helped build Target Field, you know, that's an old riverbed down there, and you have to start driving pilings, and that's what we're seeing here. We're at the 30, 40, 50% engineering level. And so we're getting the costs, you know, much more precisely done.
Are there other costs that could be hidden out there or not discovered at this point in time?
There might be, but you have contingency in the construction. You run into things. You know,
Sure.
the sinkhole that nobody saw, the old sewer lines that nobody had put on the maps that you have to take care of, things of that sort. But we're getting to the point now where the costs should be contained. Having said that, we're doing this in the midst of this construction boom, and so you know the price of cement can jump pretty quickly, and that's a big factor as well. And so this project is taking place during a boom, so there's more volatility in just underlying prices for a project of this sort, as opposed to like the Green Line connecting Minneapolis and St. Paul. That was done mostly during a recession, and so we had bids were coming in under budget there. So there is that price volatility.
But I sense that you think that this increase that has been announced at the end of April is legitimate. To build a system is going to cost that unless there are modifications made to the system.
Unless you start thinking about ways to reduce the scope.
Dialing it
That's
back.
Right. And that's the discussion that's going on right now. What's the proper balance? When we went through Hiawatha, that balancing act took place at various points along the way. If you look at the conduit, you know, the overhead catenary rather in downtown Minneapolis, that's not fancy catenary. That's pretty basic industrial catenary. That was one of the ways that costs were contained on that project. a number of features that were part of the original Green Line project along University Avenue, some landscaping and lighting and things like that. Those ended up on the cutting room floor, or the city of St. Paul ended up picking up some of those costs. You know, this happens in these projects. The art in doing this, the art of being the construction, leading the construction, is hitting and leading the political decision making, is making sure you control costs as best you can without compromising the functionality of the system. And that's really the debate that's going on right now about this additional $341 million.
Well, it seems to me that the public position that's been taken is that we will have to find a way to bring this project back closer, if not to the point it was before, dollar-wise, before the April announcement was made.
I think that's a reasonable exercise to undertake at this point in this project.
Okay.
I absolutely think it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. You've got to look at, okay, where are there places that we can save some money?
Right.
What are the effects of those changes, those
Yes.
cutbacks in scope? What's it going to do to ridership? What's it going to do to the competitiveness of the project at the federal level, which is very important since we're expecting the federal government to pay for half of this project. Mm-hmm. So it's in a competition right now with 6 other similar projects across the country.
And how many are going to make it to the final?
Well, I don't know. I think most of them eventually will. If we can solve this problem, we're in a good position to get this project approved by the Obama administration, which would be by the early 2017 or late 16.
So just under $2 billion. Does there come a point, Peter, when you sort of throw up your hands and say, we can't spend that amount of money to accomplish this objective?
There is a point. I don't, and right now we're trying to see what number, at what number we can bring this project in at. This project, it's a part of a system. Okay, we go back.
And it's a great system. I think the light rail, the corridor, and the Hiawatha line are tremendous.
Well, remember, it was the critics called it the train to nowhere. I always like to say there was a heck of a lot of people going nowhere if that's a train to nowhere. And then the ridership, it's blown the doors off the estimates. Same for the Green Line. But what's happening now with the Southwest line, we're now approaching the creation of a real system. Because now you'll be able to take a one-seat ride from Eden Prairie to downtown Minneapolis, to the University of Minnesota, and to St. Paul. You'll be able to connect into the Hiawatha line. And right behind Southwest, we're planning the Bottineau line, which will be an extension of the Blue Line, which will go all the way up into Brooklyn Park. With the concentration of jobs and population in the southwest quadrant of the metropolitan area, the Southwest Corridor is an absolutely essential part of the system. We've got to figure out how to resolve some of the problems, figure out what the proper scope is, and then forge ahead. We've got an administration in Washington that's ready to fund this. They like our projects here in the Twin Cities. They like the system we're building. But every one of these lines all over the country, and I talk to people all over the country, all of these are big, big capital projects. And they have a big impact on the communities. And so you've got to, you shouldn't be surprised that problems arise, that there are cost issues, and you've got to just sort of figure out how you're going to dial it back, or figure out if you're going to bite the bullet and provide the additional scope that you need to make it work.
Let's make sure our viewership, Peter, understands how this is being funded. Now, you mentioned the Federal Transit Authority is expected, at least hoped, to contribute about 50% of the overall cost. Is that correct?
That's right. Of the total cost, 50% is coming from the federal government. 10% would come from the state of Minnesota.
Now, is that the state of Minnesota that's got a Republican-controlled House?
That's the state of Minnesota that's got a Republican-controlled House.
Aren't they sort of anathema to these kinds of projects?
Well, and that's one of the reasons why the governor has proposed a new transportation package that would call for additional sales tax here in the metropolitan area to get the state out of the business of providing capital funding or the operating funding for these lines. That's what happens in most of the regions around the country, in Phoenix and Dallas and Denver and Portland. Mm-hmm. Most of the money, there's not very much money at all coming from the state. And the difficulty with state capital investment is it's a bonding contribution, and that takes a supermajority.
Oh boy.
And it's for just a mere 10% of the
Well,
cost.
a mere 10% is a lot of money, but
It's a lot of money,
but
but
it's 10%.
It's only 10%,
Right.
but that is the one chunk of money that we don't have completely lined
So
up.
where's the remaining 40% going to come
10% from the Hennepin County Regional Railroad Authority. In this case,
They get
that's
their
property
money.
taxes.
Okay, property taxes.
From all over Hennepin County. And then the last 30% comes from the county's Transit Improvement Board, which I chair. It's the Joint Powers Board comprised of 5 counties that imposed a 1/4-cent sales
The
tax.
metropolitan counties.
Metropolitan counties, Anoka County,
Yes.
Dakota County, Washington County, Ramsey, and Hennepin. In 2008, to expand the transit system. That tax will now throw off about $115 million a year. We have pledged almost $500 million to this project out of that sales tax. All 5 counties on board signed up to do that as a part of this joint powers agreement. And it's part of a plan that we have to build out transit ways and transit improvements all over the metropolitan area. The concern among some of the other counties is that if the price of this gets to be too big,
Going to suck all the money out?
then their project's going to get
Sure.
pushed off the
Well,
edge of the table.
that might be a legitimate concern.
It is. And so the $341 million increase in price would mean that the county's Transit Improvement Board, the 5 metro counties, would be contributing $100 million more to this project.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. And so we're trying to figure out what makes sense here as we go forward, what that right balance is between scope and cost to get the project done.
Somewhere you described this as sort of a 3-dimensional chess game, which I think is pretty interesting. But you've just described at least 4 or 5 different players, and I'm sure there's another level of players that we haven't even talked about. But who's pulling that together? Is that in your bailiwick to make sure that all the things are coming together at the same time?
I've been an advocate, and counties have been leaders on these transit projects right from the beginning. There'd be no Hiawatha if Hennepin County hadn't stepped up and hadn't worked with the other counties in the metro area to advocate for that, worked with our congressional delegation to get some early money into that. Ultimately, the system, though, is built and operated by the Metropolitan Council through Metro Transit. And so they need to be working on this balancing act as well. There are lots of players. The complexities are huge, but you've got to have somebody who keeps this vision about a transportation system that's going to work for the 21st century. We're going to grow by almost 1 million people between now and 2040. Their jobs in this corridor are going to grow by 60 or 70,000 in the Southwest corridor alone. If you look back at the history of Minnesota as a state, our economic history, we were a middling performer until after the Second World War. But after the Second World War, there were some strategic investments that were made. We invested in education and higher education, but we also invested in infrastructure. We invested in an international airport. We invested in the freeway system. Those were the fundamental building blocks of the modern Minnesota economy. Right now, we're engaged with Southwest and these other rail lines in making the fundamental investments in the 21st century Minnesota economy that's going to keep us among the high performers, keep our disposable income higher than the national average, and keep us prosperous.
The governor expressed shock, dismay, you can use the proper adjective, when he found out about the projected cost increase. And you've sort of put it into perspective, which I appreciate. But what for our viewership, particularly out in the southwest suburbs, to dial this back is going to have an effect, I assume, on at least possibly have an effect on the number of stations that are located, for example, in Eden Prairie.
Right, there are 5 stations planned in Eden Prairie. The discussions of ways to crack the $341 million nut here to reduce the size of that have included the elimination of the Mitchell Road Station.
On the far
western end. That crosses some wetlands. It's pretty expensive construction. Another thought was the Southwest Station, right there where the Southwest Transit has its core operations and park and ride there. We could move back from that station as well and still have 3 stations in Eden Prairie. We probably have to build some park and ride capacity further to the east. It's complicated, though, because you have to look at, again, ridership. What does it do to economic development? What does it do to our competitiveness at the federal level? All these factors come into play. But this is not just about transit ridership. It's about defining what these communities along the line are going to be in the 21st century.
Peter, I asked you about Eden Prairie because I was aware that there's some major dollars perhaps to be saved out in that area, but it's my understanding that the reductions in cost, the hopeful reductions in costs, will be distributed along the entire line. Is that correct?
Well, there's a list that includes changes, reductions in every city along the line. I have been impressed with the representatives of the various cities about their willingness to be in a problem-solving mode. You know, they all say, we can't let this line die. That's the key thing here.
That's great.
And because they understand how building this system is so fundamentally important to the region, but to this southwest quadrant of the region. I mean, this is the connection to the 21st century economy. Every one of these cities has got a development plan around these stations. It's going to redefine these communities, and it's going to redefine them for the better. In Hopkins, the plans now are for development connected to the stations there that are going to revive Main Street, expand their Main Street, and create a core for Hopkins that expands on what they have right now, and it's going to be tied to these transit stops. St. Louis Park, the same thing. In Eden Prairie, we're going to be, originally the route was going to continue down the bike trail, the old rail line, but we examined that. And by going to the Golden Triangle and Opus, you pick up an enormous number of workers who can then make use of the system. It provides access to those jobs to other people within the region. So that's why we made the decision. It costs some money to do that, but in terms of building a robust system, that's what you need to do. And Mayor Tyra-Lukens was very eloquent, I remember 5 or 6 years ago, where she said, you know—
Is the Eden Prairie mayor.
Yes. When you're building in Minneapolis and even in the first ring suburbs, you can orient to the old rail lines, because that's the development in those communities was around those rail lines. But if you get out to the second ring suburbs, you've got to get to the freeway system. And so that's why we're going down and getting to the Golden Triangle.
Now, Peter, I really do wish you well in getting a handle on a price that is acceptable to all concerned. And I think you're going to accomplish that. But there's something that's sort of sitting out there like a buzzard or on the shoulder of the project, which is this Kenilworth situation. I'm not necessarily a neutral observer, but it seems to me that there's a few people that live in that area that don't want that light rail through their neighborhood. They just don't want it, and they're going to do anything they can to stop it from coming through there. And I'm not asking you to tell us what your litigation strategies are, because I know the case is still in litigation. But it would seem to me, in the unlikely scenario that that went the wrong way, that would be a major impediment to the success of this project going forward.
There's a question about how all the laws fit together, the environmental laws and the municipal consent laws of the state, the federal environmental laws, and that's really what the case is about. Having said that, if there is a problem, what is the remedy? Is it going to be to stop the project? Is it going to be that there has to be an additional round of municipal consent? I'm not going to handicap that. I've watched these things all over the country. I've watched them here. There were lawsuits on Hiawatha. There were lawsuits on the Green Line, the central corridor between Minneapolis and St. Paul. And they were managed and worked through, and I'm confident that's going to happen here.
I like that attitude, and I hope you're right. Peter, I know that there's a lot of goals and aspirations associated with this project, but let's talk about transit equity. Is that an expression you're familiar with?
It is, and it really has to do with people and communities that have become isolated in the modern economy. In the 1980s, Minneapolis alone lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs. Those used to be jobs that you could take one of the buses to, or you could walk from your house and get to the job. Now those jobs have moved out into the suburban areas. The transportation system hasn't followed them, and so now one of the things that we're trying to do with this system is to provide access to those jobs. And so someone from North Minneapolis doesn't have to come into Minneapolis, transfer twice to get out on a long, long bus ride. This is going to provide great access to jobs in this job-rich southwest corridor. We've been working with MCTC, and they've identified jobs that require only an associate degree in the Southwest Corridor. And so we're going to be working on training programs, recruiting people from North Minneapolis and elsewhere who are in need of jobs, getting them into these associate degree programs that are geared to the jobs that are available in the Southwest Corridor, and then there'll be a transit system to take them there.
Win-win.
Win-win, absolutely. That's what we're trying to do here, is build a stronger community. We made investments after the Second World War that made this a better place to live and grow up and raise your kids, and we're making those investments again. But we've got to follow through and get the job done, and that's where we are right now. We've got some problems to solve, but we're going to do it. We're going to get it done. We're going to build a transportation system that supports prosperity for the whole community.
Peter, I'm aware, and you're aware, there's a certain element of the populace that thinks this is just a drain hole, and I don't want to spend more taxes building a system like this of uncertain results and not necessarily improving my ability to get from point A to point B. What do you tell those kind of people?
Well, I tell them a couple things. Number one, both Hiawatha and Central Corridor, the blue line and the green line, have blown the doors off of the ridership projections.
Successful.
Absolutely successful. Where they're carrying over 20% of all the rides. 2 LRT lines are carrying over 20% of all the rides on the Metro Transit transit system. We've had ridership levels that weren't predicted on Hiawatha. They weren't supposed to happen until like 2024, 2025, and we're consistently doing that. 10 million riders a year on that line, and more than 10 million.
You and me included, I'm sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. The other thing is the investment that's taking place along these lines. It is absolutely phenomenal. You know, we had a recession after Hiawatha opened up, so it was tough. But since the recession ended, there's been enormous investment in housing at virtually every stop along the Hiawatha line, from Bloomington all the way into downtown Minneapolis.
I've seen it.
The old Powers site, I mean, look at that. It sat there for how many years? Those 2 skyways to nowhere hanging there. And now there are going to be 3 big projects on there, the XL headquarters and 2 luxury projects. At Target Field Station, there's development happening each and every day. There are like 5 or 6 projects right now under construction, including the Be the Match, which is going to have 900 jobs. They're going to have their national headquarters right there at Target Field Station. Along the Green Line to St. Paul, there's been almost $3 billion worth of building permits pulled. That doesn't include the Vikings Stadium for $1 billion. $3 billion.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and so we're seeing development happen, and it's a pattern of development that's going to be strong, make our communities stronger. And people like to say those lines don't pay for themselves. There is a subsidy that has to go into the operating. Well, the roads don't pay for themselves either. There's well over $1 billion in property taxes and property-based fees that go into our road system in the state of Minnesota each and every year. I mean, Franklin Avenue Bridge, right now we're having to reconstruct it. It's a county bridge, and we're throwing a lot of property taxes into that, and that happens all over the state of Minnesota, in every county. I believe that these infrastructure investments help define how we grow as a community. And they're essential to whether we're going to grow or not. We have to be able to move people. We have to be able to work, to school, to other activities.
Well, we're in competition with other areas. We have to provide some sort of equivalent system, it seems to me.
That's absolutely the case. And people always ask me, I'm from Minneapolis. They say, yeah, your biggest competition is St. Paul, right? And I say, you're absolutely right. Sao Paulo, Brazil.
There you are.
Because we're fighting here an international competition. And we have got to have a modern economy that moves people, but also provides the capacity on the roads to move materials and finished goods. And these things are not cheap. Infrastructure is not cheap, but we need to keep up with this if we're going to continue to prosper, if we're going to provide opportunities for people here in this region. In addition, there's plenty of evidence from around the country that the next generation of workers, the millennial workers that everybody's fighting over, trying to get the talented millennials, that they want a system that's got a high transit component that allows them to live in communities that are strong. And I think that this combination of biking, pedestrian, transit improvements with a balance of roads in the region, I think that's the way to go. In addition, these lines provide great access for individuals and communities that have been left out of the economic prosperity for generations. We need to provide connectivity for those individuals if they're going to prosper, and I think that these transit investments are the way to do it.
Peter, I love the message, and you're a hell of a spokesperson. Thanks for stopping by.
Glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Eden Prairie, realizing that this is a regional project and requires regional cooperation, we have pretty willingly conceded the fact that we are going to have to eliminate the Mitchell Road station.
Eden Prairie Mayor Nancy Tyra-Lukens has long been an advocate for both bus and light rail transit.
I feel like there are a lot of circulation issues along the site.
The mayor is a member of the important Corridor Management Committee, which directly advises the Met Council on the Southwest Light Rail Project.
The issue is, what do we do about Southwest Station and Town Center Station? We really don't want to lose either of those stations at this point. The access to jobs at both of those stations is great. We've already lost access to about 5,000 jobs by eliminating Mitchell Station. If we eliminated Town Center and Southwest, that would be about an additional 7,000 to 8,000 jobs that would no longer be accessible to residents along the corridor. Well over half of the stations on this line have less employment base than here. The advantage of a line like this is that it delivers people all along a corridor and picks up people all along a corridor. The majority of our transit-dependent people are kind of along the corridor that is planned for light rail, whether it be Southwest Station or Town Center Station. So losing either of those stations really makes it difficult for our transit-dependent population to reach jobs and to reach educational opportunities such as at the University of Minnesota. It's not just about a commute into the city or a commute from an intercity resident out to Eden Prairie. It's also a great way for seniors and other transit-dependent people to get to medical appointments at various clinics along the line. For the millennials that maybe live in uptown and want to come out and visit their families, you eliminate access when you move those stations and drop those stations off. So we're very concerned about that.
Democratic Visions is independently crafted by volunteers from Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, Edina, and Bloomington.
As you may know, Democratic Visions is put on by a cadre of volunteers. We wouldn't be on the air without their help. One of our best volunteers over the last 6 years is Beth Schrader. Beth and her family are moving off to Madison, Wisconsin. Beth, we're going to miss you a lot.
Thank you. I'm going to miss you too. I've enjoyed my time here and meeting all the guests and everybody I've worked with here.
Democratic Visions has a couple of tokens of our appreciation. One is this very nice plant that you can take with you, obviously.
Thank you.
And the other one is very important because we understand, us Minnesotans, that you can't get Pearson's nut goodies in Madison, Wisconsin.
I don't
so
think
we've
so.
got a handful of them here for you to take with you.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Tim.
Thanks a lot.